The story begins with the female lead standing nervously in front of a building, constantly checking her watch. She's about to meet someone she hopes to bring a little light into her life again. Years ago, the two of them sat quietly in front of Yu's pet's grave. She was heartbroken. Seeing her in pain, Yuchi made a heartfelt promise. He'd become a veterinarian, so she'd never have to grieve the loss of a pet again. She looked at him, confused at first. But then Yuchi smiled, sharing his dream of caring for their furry friends. That moment sparked something in her. Her sadness gave way to happiness, and she couldn't help but smile. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around Yuchi, filled with gratitude. Over time, Yuchi came to treasure every moment they spent together, from their fun-filled playtimes to acing tests that even impressed Yatsa. Those days were full of laughter, effort, and quiet connection. But then, out of nowhere, she dropped a bombshell. She was transferring to another school. The day she left, Yuchi saw her off at the train station. He managed to force a smile as the train pulled away, watching her slowly fade into the distance. As he stood there waving goodbye, a mix of emotions washed over him. He couldn't help but wonder, was what he felt really love? Whatever it was, one thing was certain. He sincerely wished her happiness, no matter where the path ahead would take her. Years later, Yuchi sat slouched in his chair, his fingers absent-mindedly tugging at the edge of a worn book page. His mind drifted far away, lost in distant memories. Suddenly, a classmate snapped at him, clearly annoyed that Yuchi had forgotten his cleaning duty again. But Yuchi, still stuck in his own thoughts, didn't respond. Irritated, the boy shouted louder, this time ordering him to wipe the whiteboard. Snapped back to reality, Yuchi jolted upright and began stammering out apologies, clearly startled and flustered. The classroom bursts into chaos as students scold Yuchi for getting on the bully's bad side. Again, as he slowly stands up, he notices his desk is covered in cruel, mocking messages, scribbles meant to hurt. Later, during school break, he walks alone down the hallway, quietly repeating lines from his notebook. Small motivational quotes he's written to keep himself going. He's really trying to stay positive. But behind him, the bully's mocking laughter echoes through the corridor, each laugh chipping away at his courage, slowly pushing him further into isolation. When Yuchi opens his assigned school cubby, his heart sinks. His classmates have dumped their trash inside again. The sight hits hard, dragging his mood even lower. But he clenches his fists and forces himself to stay focused. This is still better than middle school, he reminds himself. Even if it's just a little progress, it matters. Clinging tightly to his dream of becoming a veterinarian, Yuchi takes a deep breath and keeps moving forward. On the train ride home, a wave of relief washes over Yuchi. He looks down at his recent result sheet, his best scores yet. For a moment, he feels proud, like maybe things are finally turning around. Just then, a message from his mother pops up on his phone. Pick up dinner for the family. Without wasting a second, he rushes to complete the errand. He gets it done. But even after checking everything off the list, an uneasy feeling creeps in. His mother's temper is unpredictable, and no matter how small the mistake, it could turn into something much worse. As Yuchi arrived home, his sister greeted him at the door, but his eyes immediately locked onto the mess. The house was overflowing with trash, and a familiar wave of anxiety rushed over him. In the living room, his mother sat slouched on the couch, her hair unkempt, completely absorbed in her phone, lost in her own world. At the dining table, Yuchi ate in silence, chewing quickly. He just wanted to get through the meal and escape to his room, so he could focus on his math homework and breathe a little easier. But just as Yuchi was trying to collect his thoughts, his mother suddenly spoke up, questioning him about his expression, accusing him of being frustrated. Before he could say a word, she snapped, angrily claiming he was probably wondering why she hadn't prepared dinner herself. Hit with a wave of sadness and frustration, Yuchi tried to explain, to tell her that wasn't what he meant at all, but she wouldn't listen. Her mind was made up, and his voice was drowned out. She keeps scolding Yuchi, fully convinced that he's blaming her. With a sharp thud, she slams her hands against the table and suddenly stands up, her messy hair falling over her face as she starts to yell. Her voice grows louder as she rants, unleashing all the frustration she's been carrying. She talks about how she's constantly overwhelmed, running to the hospital, taking multiple medications, juggling a part-time job, only to be criticized by both Yamato-san and Nozaki-san. Then, turning back to Yuchi, she lashes out again, accusing him of judging her, saying all he has to do is attend school without a single real worry. In a sudden burst of anger, she throws the dishes aside, furious, blaming him for ruining her appetite. Stunned and overwhelmed, Yuchi stammers apology after apology, even blaming himself for making her so angry. Tears well up in Yuchi's eyes, but he fights to hold them back. Once inside his room, he shuts the door behind him and sinks to the floor, burying his face in his hands. Exhausted and overwhelmed, he grips his head, trying to make sense of the chaos around him. After a deep breath, he pushes himself up, determined to focus on his math homework, refusing to let the day break his spirit. With newfound resolve, Yuchi moves toward his study table. As he switches on the light, his eyes land on childhood pictures with his friends. Among them is a gentle, smiling image of Yatsa. A wave of disappointment washes over him as he remembers the happiness he once had. A stark contrast to the life he's living now. Trying to focus on his math, Yuchi's mind keeps drifting back to the bullies at school and his mother's terrifying temper. Yet, despite the heavy weight of it all, he pushes forward. A small smile tugs at Yuchi's lips as he remembers Yap's innocent childhood face and the promise they made together to get into Hokushin National University and become veterinarians. Just thinking about her gives him strength. No matter how painful life gets, no matter how cruel the bullies are, even if it feels like the world itself wants him gone, he decides to keep going. If not for himself, then at least for her. As Yuchi struggles to hold on, the crushing weight of his situation begins to break him. Doubt creeps in. He starts blaming himself, scolding his very existence. Was Yatsuo ever truly a reason to stay alive? Or was she just an excuse? A fragile illusion he clung to? Gripping his head with both hands, he trembles as the voices of depression whisper in his mind, pulling him toward a darker path. In his mind, Yuchi envisions Yatsuha, but not as the kind, innocent friend he once knew. Now, she appears cold, distant, her eyes filled with disappointment. She doesn't smile. She doesn't care about his dream of becoming a veterinarian. Instead, she scolds him, her voice echoing the same cruel words he hears every day. The voices that torment him, the ones that urge him to end it all. The vision becomes so intense, so unbearable, that Yuchi desperately covers his ears, pleading with her in his own mind to stop. But the overwhelming darkness refuses to fade. His hands tremble as he sets his pen down. In that crushing moment, convinced that even Yatsuha wants him gone, he makes his final decision. At that very moment, something strange happens. Yatsuha, wearing her familiar childish smile and a faint blush on her cheeks, suddenly pulls the curtain aside and cheerfully greets him. Still lost deep in his thoughts, Yuchi stares at her, completely confused, unsure if what he's seeing is real or just another illusion. The moment Yuchi realizes it's really her, his face freezes in shock. Seeing his stunned expression, Yatsuha lets out an annoyed sigh and reminds him about the letter she sent not too long ago, saying she'd be seeing him very soon. With a bright smile, she excitedly reveals that she transferred back to his school just recently. Still overwhelmed with confusion and disbelief, Yuchi quickly steps closer to the window, his eyes widening as he sees Yatsuha casually standing outside on the second-floor ledge. He stares at her, completely stunned, unable to process what's happening. Beaming with excitement, Yatsuha cheerfully admits she couldn't wait to see him. She gestures toward the building next door and explains she jumped directly to his window, because it was the quickest way in. Hearing her reckless explanation, Yuchi grabs her out of concern and quickly pulls her inside, wrapping his arms around her in a protective hug. After all this time apart, the warmth of his embrace catches Yatsuha off guard. She blushes, her heart swelling with happiness just from being close to him again. But just as suddenly, Yuchi pulls away, leaving Yatsuha confused. In his mind, the memory of her cold, scolding face still lingers, the vision that urged him to die. It haunts him. On top of that, he can't even recall the letter she mentioned. The lines between reality and illusion begin to blur as anxiety and depression creep in once more, twisting everything around him. Yuchi's spiraling thoughts are suddenly interrupted when Yatsuha excitedly hands him a pack of chips, calling it her moving-in gift. Still dazed, he looks at her in confusion. With a bright smile, she explains that the chips might be a little crushed, since she accidentally squished them between her ankle and the wall while jumping over. But she quickly adds with confidence that they still taste just as good. With determination, Yatsuha tries to open the chips pack, not embarrassed, but smiling. Wanting to avoid making a mess in Yuchi's room, she sits down and keeps focused on the task. Watching her struggle, still a bit in disbelief, Yuchi gently takes the pack from her and effortlessly opens it. With a burst of excitement, Yatsuha thanks Yuchi for his cleverness. As she pops a chip into her mouth, she thanks him again for making sure none of the chips went to waste. Then she invites him to take a bite. As Yuchi takes a chip, his thoughts begin to wander again. But Yatsuha, holding 2 chips at once and stuffing them into her mouth, calls him back to the moment. When he looks at her, the sight of the 2 chips in her mouth makes him smile for the first time. The way she looks like a little duck is undeniably cute, just like she wanted to make him smile. Suddenly, Yatsuha rushes over to Yuchi's desk, her excitement unmistakable as she grabs his veterinary medicine books. With glowing enthusiasm, she looks at him, Still confused, Yuchi watches her closely. Without warning, she throws her arms around him in a tight hug, confessing her love and admiring his unwavering passion to become an animal doctor. Even after all these years, realizing the depth of her affection, and finally accepting that he had lost sight of his own dreams, Yuchi gently takes her hand, admiring her kindness, cuteness, loving nature, and so much more. His hand softly rests on Yatsuha's cheek, a tender gesture full of warmth. She confesses her love once more, her words stirring something deep inside him. Overcome with emotion, tears fill Yuchi's eyes. He pulls her into another hug, this time with even more affection. Feeling deep gratitude that Yuchi hadn't given up on life despite all his struggles, Yatsuha gently taps his head, like comforting a child. She promises him that everything will be all right. After a while, Yuchi apologizes, feeling incredibly sleepy. With a warm smile, Yatsuha agrees it's time to go home. As they climb the stairs and pass through the living room, Yatsuha unexpectedly apologizes to his mother for interrupting, leaving her completely baffled. When Yuchi hands his shoes to Yatsuha, his sister suddenly appears, looking totally dumbfounded. At the same time, Yatsuha greets their sister and warmly welcomes their father, who has just returned home. The entire family is left puzzled by Yatsuha's unexpected visit, exchanging confused looks. But Yatsuha, undeterred, beams brightly and waves at everyone, hoping to see them again soon. As she gazes outward, her expression shifts suddenly, from warm to icy in an instant. Yatsuha addresses everyone, his family, the bullies, even Yuchi's killer, blaming them for pushing him to the edge. Yuchi walks beside her, confused about what she means. Then, she turns back to him, her mood softening into a sweet, loving smile. She vows to conquer the dark fate that's been haunting him. As she says goodbye, she thanks him for walking her home and eagerly looks forward to their next meeting. As Yatsuha leaves, Yuchi lies back on his bed, torn, unsure whether he should feel happy or not. Back at school, people used to act kind to his face, but behind his back, they called him awkward. No one ever wanted to sit with him. To them, he was just boring. Now, the thought that Yatsuha might one day become just like the others, cold, distant, maybe even wishing him dead, fills Yuchi with fear and heartbreak. He grips his blanket tightly, sinking deeper into despair as tears well up in his eyes. His thoughts spiral, shifting wildly from one fear to another, until the emotional weight becomes too much. Eventually, still crying, he drifts off to sleep. Around 4 a.m., Yuchi wakes up to see Yatsuha's blushing face, beaming down at him with a cheerful good morning. Still groggy and confused by her sudden appearance in his room, she cheerfully confesses that she snuck in through the window, again. As he tries to make sense of the situation, stunned to find her sitting on top of him, she laughs playfully and leans in closer, whispering that she just wants to be near him. Realizing she may have startled him, Yatsuha quickly backs off, suddenly self-conscious and wondering if maybe she was too heavy. Now lying beside him, her face slightly flushed, Yatsuha gently places her hand on him, beaming with joy as she says how happy she is to see him again this morning. Still dazed and struggling to process everything, the MC just stares at her in disbelief. But the moment he notices her uniform, his eyes widen. She's joining his school. Excitement suddenly rushes through him, replacing his confusion with a mix of surprise and anticipation. She grabs the MC's hand with excitement, her eyes sparkling as she suggests they head to school together. She's clearly thrilled at the idea of spending the whole day by his side. As he starts to change, Yatsuha quickly steps out of the room, her face glowing red with embarrassment. A few moments later, when he walks out in his uniform, she stares at him, completely captivated. Her cheeks flush deeper as she softly mutters how cool he looks. Before he can even react, she throws her arms around him in a tight, loving hug, her heart clearly overflowing. Even though the MC remains cautious about Yatsuha's sudden change in personality, he can't help but blush. For now, he decides to simply enjoy this rare warmth from her, knowing deep down she might soon go back to her colder self. As he catches a glimpse of his own flustered expression reflected in the mirror, a wave of anxiety hits him. He feels both nervous and afraid. Just then, the MC's mother suddenly appears at the top of the stairs, her hair a wild mess, swaying around her face like a ghost from a horror manga. There's something in her hand, but she's clearly trying to hide it. The moment her eyes land on Yatsuha inside their home, her expression hardens. Without hesitation, she scolds her for coming over every single day and tells her to leave immediately. She says she has something important to discuss with her son, alone. Before Yatsuha can say a word, she's suddenly pushed aside. But instead of getting upset, she just smiles mysteriously and heads downstairs, quietly clutching Yuchi's bag. With a cheerful wave, she calls out that she hopes to see him again soon. As she steps outside, her sweet, innocent expression quickly fades. Her eyes sharpen with determination. She's not about to let Yuchi's mother do anything harmful to the one she loves. Then something catches her eye. The kitchen door. It's slightly open. Her instincts flare up. Cautiously, she steps inside, her suspicions quietly growing. What greets Yatsuha in the kitchen is unsettling. Trash and garbage piled everywhere, creating a chaotic mess. Suddenly, Yatsuha calmly steps further inside. With a chilling calmness, she lights a piece of paper on the stove and watches it slowly burn. Meanwhile, back in the room, Yuchi's mother is still yelling at him, her voice sharp and relentless. But her rant is abruptly cut off as the fire alarm blares through the house. Without a second thought, Yuchi bolts toward the kitchen, leaving his mother behind. As Yuchi rushes off toward the kitchen, his mother, who had been silently clutching a sharp knife, suddenly slices into her own hand. Blood spurts from the deep gash, but she doesn't flinch. Instead of acknowledging the pain, she turns coldly and blames Yuchi, accusing him of being the reason for her suffering. She cries out, blaming him. If Yuchi had just listened instead of running away, none of this would have happened. When Yuchi reaches the kitchen, all he sees is the fire alarm blaring. No flames in sight. He stands there, completely confused. At that moment, Yoda peeks in, her face innocent but worried. She softly asks about the alarm. Still puzzled, Yuchi hesitantly shrugs it off, calling it a malfunction. She lets out a small sigh of relief, then suddenly brightens up. Holding out Yuchi's bag and shoes, she playfully insists she grabbed them by accident, though it's clear she did it on purpose. While he stays bewildered and uneasy, she gently sets his shoes down and beams at him with a cheerful smile, suggesting they head to school together. Meanwhile, in Yuchi's room, his mother still clutches the blood-covered knife with her wounded hand, her mind disturbed and determined to show him her pain, believing this would stop him from abandoning her. But as she moves closer to the table, her eyes land on a burnt piece of paper, the family photograph, half destroyed. Only Yuchi remains standing happily, while she and her daughter are fading into ashes. The sight shakes her to the core. Overwhelmed, she stumbles backward before collapsing to the floor. On their way to school, Yatsu stays cheerful, playfully moving around, while Uchi, still uneasy, clutches his motivational card tightly. Noticing her curiosity, he awkwardly admits that reading it on the way has become a habit. She immediately smiles and playfully apologizes. Before he can even glance at the motivational quote meant to boost his confidence, she suddenly hugs him, beaming with joy over his decision to become an animal doctor. With an excited grin, Yatsu teases him, saying he's only doing it to make her happy, and that he's free to choose any other path. But when Uchi firmly insists he genuinely wants to be a veterinarian, she blushes and hugs him once more, beaming as she shows him a picture of her adorable dog, gushing about how playful it is all the time. Walking beside Yatsu makes Uchi feel lighter, but as they reach the train station, his anxiety slowly returns. He grips the straps of his bag tightly, dreading a run-in with the usual troublemakers. The moment Yatsu spots them, her cheerful smile vanishes. Her face hardens, eyes turning icy and sharp, ready for whatever comes next. As they step onto the train, Yuchi suddenly freezes. His eyes lock onto three all-too-familiar faces, his former bullies from middle school. Panic sets in. His hands begin to tremble, and he instinctively shrinks back, avoiding eye contact, silently praying they won't notice him. Yuchi quietly tries to calm himself, convincing his racing mind that they won't mess with him anymore. Maybe, like a broken toy, they've lost interest. At worst, they'll laugh and move on. But then the leader of the group spots Yatsuba. His eyes narrow with curiosity. With a sly grin, he nudges his buddies, and just like that, the teasing begins. They mock Yuchi about his taste in girls, their laughter echoing through the train. Already ducking behind the other passengers, Yuchi feels his body begin to tremble. Just being near them drags him back to those cruel memories, when they forced him to eat animals as a joke, humiliated him with endless mockery, and worst of all, the time one of them wrapped a long cloth around his neck, tightening it while sneering that his very existence was disgusting. The flashbacks hit hard. His stomach churns, nausea rising like a wave. He feels like he could throw up right there on the train. Sensing Yuchi's fear, Yatsuba casts a quick glance his way, her face calm, but her eyes holding something deeper than just concern. There's a quiet intensity there, like a storm waiting to break. Meanwhile, the gang finally locks eyes on Yuchi. With smug grins spreading across their faces, they start moving toward him, their body language dripping with cruel intent. They're ready to mess with him again, and they're enjoying every second of it. But just as the bullies close in, they abruptly stop, stunned. Yatsuha, cheeks flushed pink, suddenly wraps her arms around Yuchi in a bold, affectionate hug. Yuchi goes completely stiff. His brain short-circuits, unable to keep up with what's happening. 1 second he was frozen in fear, and now this? He doesn't even know how to react. Still blushing, Yatsuha looks up at Yuchi. Then, without a moment's hesitation, slips her hands inside his jacket. The gang is left speechless, staring in disbelief. Their jaws drop as they try to make sense of what they're seeing. And before they can even react, she ups the ante, boldly inviting Yuchi to do the same. Yuchi hesitates, his face full of confusion, but eventually he gives in and follows her lead. As he slides his hands into her jacket, a calm, comforting warmth spreads through him. Without even realizing it, his tense shoulders loosen, and he gently pulls Yatsuha into a quiet hug. The gang just stands there, completely frozen, unable to process what they've just seen. Finally, the leader snaps out of it, his face twisted with irritation. He steps forward, barking at Yuchi to cut it out and stop flaunting such pathetic behavior. But before the gang leader can make another move, Yatsuha, sensing Yuchi's growing discomfort and spotting the next train station approaching, cheerfully chimes in with a suggestion. They should get off here. Without missing a beat, she grabs his hand, and the two of them slip out of the train together, leaving the stunned gang frozen in disbelief behind them. As the gang sees them stepping off the train, they immediately follow. The leader, wearing a smug grin, pulls out his phone. On the screen is a humiliating video of Yuchi, one he cruelly recorded back when he used to torment him. Clutching the phone like it's his trump card, he strides toward them, eager to shove it in Yatsuha's face and expose Yuchi to shame. Yuchi, still holding Yatsuha's hand, walks briskly, completely unaware of the threat closing in from behind. Just as the gang gets within reach, Yatsuha nonchalantly pulls a 100% free food pamphlet from her bag and tosses it right in their path. Two of the leader's lackeys stop in their tracks, instantly distracted by the promise of free food, their curiosity getting the better of them. The leader, undeterred, pushes forward with anger, heading straight for the entrance of the fifth gate. Meanwhile, Yatsuha receives a message from a friend about loud noise nearby. Thinking quickly, she pulls out a newly bought textbook from her bag as a cover. But instead, she deliberately drops a fluffy teddy bear toy. Feigning surprise, Yatsuha excitedly picks up the teddy bear and eagerly shows it to Yuchi, stopping just in front of the entrance to the fifth gate. Yuchi looks at her, confused, unable to understand what she's planning. Without saying a word, Yatsuha suddenly crouches down and carefully sets the small teddy bear right a centimeter away from the deep train tracks. At that moment, the gang leader storms over, shouting in frustration. The leader's loud voice sends a shiver down Yuchi's spine, but Yatsuha remains unfazed, her expression turning icy cold. As the leader approaches, he starts mocking Yuchi, taunting him for avoiding the gang for so long. Meanwhile, Yatsuha suddenly notices something. The leader is standing just a few centimeters away from the tiny teddy bear on the tracks. As the gang leader shouts, Yuchi suddenly wraps his arms tightly around Yatsuha, his voice shaking as he begs the bully not to hurt her, insisting she has nothing to do with any of this. The leader, now even more irritated, yells insults at Yuchi. Still holding him, Yatsuha quietly glances at her friend, who's waiting for her signal to alert the station staff. Without a second thought, Yatsuha bolts off to get help. Meanwhile, the bully keeps berating Yuchi, but Yatsuha, playing along with her plan, smirks and teases the leader, mocking him for being jealous of Yuchi. Her words strike a nerve, and Yuchi's frustration grows, but she keeps grinning. She praises Yuchi's talent, highlights his kindness, and even points out his cuteness, insisting these are exactly why the bully is so jealous. Gucci, panicked and tense, grabs Yatsuha's shoulders, desperately trying to stop her, but it's too late. Her teasing pushes the bully over the edge. Furious, he shouts that he's not jealous, then lunges at Yuchi, phone in hand, ready to strike. At that exact moment, the bully's foot lands squarely on the teddy bear toy that Yatsuha had carefully placed earlier. Losing his balance, he stumbles backward and falls right onto the train tracks. His phone slips from his hand, landing beside him. Just then, the station speakers blare, announcing the train's arrival and urging passengers to step back. As the train rushes toward him, panic spreads through the station. Even the train engineer looks alarmed. At that moment, Yatsuha, along with a friend, rushes in with the station staff, urgently pointing at the fallen bully. The staff member immediately shouts at him to move quickly onto the platform. In sheer terror, Uchi scrambles along the tracks, crawling as fast as he can. Just as he pulls himself clear, the train rushes past, narrowly missing him. Though he survives, he's left panting heavily, his face pale with shock. Meanwhile, his phone lies crushed beneath the train's wheels. A crowd quickly gathers, including the two lackeys, who arrive confused and demand to know what just happened. Seizing the moment, Yatsuha dramatically clings to Uchi's coat, pretending to be absolutely terrified. With wide, innocent eyes, Yasuha insists she has no idea how any of this happened. A large crowd quickly gathers as the station announcement informs everyone that the train will be briefly stopped for a track inspection. The station inspector moves cautiously toward the tracks, while murmurs of fear and shock ripple through the onlookers. Meanwhile, Uchi remains confused and shaken, struggling to process everything. Behind him, Yasuha stands quietly, appearing nervous. But in reality, she's completely calm. Meanwhile, Uchi's two friends stand anxiously beside the station staff, watching closely. The bully, still trembling, slowly climbs up from the tracks. His face is pale, his breathing heavy, and tears fill his eyes. His friends rush to his side, worried, but he barely hears them. The near-death experience replays in his mind, how he had always tormented Uchi, telling him to die. Now, after coming so close to death himself, a deep, overwhelming fear takes hold of him. Uchi watches in surprise. For so long, this bully had terrorized him, making him shake with fear. But now, seeing him broken and terrified, Uchi can't help but feel a flicker of sympathy despite everything. At the same time, Kanzuya's eyes widen as he spots a masked woman in the crowd. Hi-Tan, a well-known streamer. She's live-streaming the entire scene, her camera zoomed in on the bully's tear-streaked face. With a playful yet mocking tone, Hi-Tan tells her viewers how this jealous guy tried to attack a couple, but ended up tripping himself right onto the train tracks. She laughs, making the moment even more humiliating for him. Though today's stream was meant to cover something else, she received a mysterious message earlier that morning, clearly sent by Yasuha. Okitan seizes the moment, arriving just in time to film Kriya boarding the train after spending the night with the girl he was cheating with. But then, she captures something even more intense. Spotting the camera, the bully Ito explodes in rage. He lunges forward, grabbing her collar and demanding she stop recording. But it's too late. Her live stream is already broadcasting his meltdown to thousands of viewers. His friends panic, frantically trying to calm things down. Meanwhile, Yasuha, completely unfazed, grabs Yuchi's hand with excitement and cheerfully leads him out of the station. As they step onto the escalator, Yuchi, still holding her hand, trembles slightly. But this time, he feels something different. For the first time ever, he isn't scared. Yuchi clenches his fist, silently motivating himself. Seeing him finally free of fear, Yasuha's face lights up with happiness. Her excitement grows as she watches him take this step forward, filled with newfound confidence. Viewers flood the chat with anger, harshly scolding Ito. Some call out his disgusting behavior, while others start naming his friends, directing their outrage at them too. On the way back to school, the MC's thoughts drift to the past. He remembers how Ito was the main reason he was relentlessly bullied, not just by his middle school classmates but even in high school. What always puzzled the MC was why his new classmates, who didn't know anything about him, turned against him from day one. His assigned desk was already vandalized with cruel messages, full of insults and words meant to break his spirit. The moment he stepped into the classroom, everyone treated him with cold disdain, throwing harsh remarks that only deepened his isolation and despair. His thoughts are broken by Yatsuha's cheerful voice, as she excitedly points to a patch of clovers nearby. With a bright smile, she carefully picks one, plucks a petal, and ties it around the MC's finger like a ring. Her cheeks flush with happiness as she playfully promises that, just like this flower, she will bring joy into his life. Witchy stares at the clover petal, confused and still trying to process her words. Meanwhile, Yatsuha twirls around happily, declaring with complete confidence that she will erase all his bad memories and fill his life with happiness. Just as Witchy repeats her words, she suddenly freezes, realizing she might have said too much. Quickly, she hides her clover-shaped watch and, putting on an overly cheerful smile, insists she was only talking about bringing fun into his life, and confidently guarantees good results from it. As the MC steps into the school, a familiar wave of fear and deep sadness washes over him, especially knowing that Yasuha is heading to the office to finalize her transfer paperwork. His body feels drained, every step heavier than the last. And just as he feared, his locker is stuffed with garbage again. The sight crushes what little spirit he had left, pulling him deeper into despair. With heavy steps, the MC pushes himself toward his classroom. But near the restroom, a group of students spot him and immediately burst into laughter, taunting him cruelly. They sneer, asking if he's come to collect the shredded remains of his books. Tossed heartlessly into the restroom, his eyes widen in horror. There they are, his books, soaked and slowly sinking into the filthy water. And all he can do is stand there, frozen in helpless despair. Kneeling down beside the mess, the MC slowly and hesitantly gathers his soaked books, his hands trembling. All around him, the mocking laughter of his classmates rings out, sharp, cruel, and echoing in his mind like a curse. Their taunts don't stop. With a downcast gaze and a face heavy with sadness and despair, he finally drags himself into the classroom and quietly takes his seat, as if trying to disappear. As the MC opens his locker, the petal ring, carefully tied around his finger by Yasuha that very morning, comes undone. The fragile petal slips from his hand, gently fluttering down until it lands on his desk. His chest tightens. The memory of her bright smile and the way she had confidently promised it would bring him happiness hits him hard. And in this moment, it feels painfully far away. As the school bell rings, the classroom is suddenly thrown into stunned silence. Yasuha steps in, her face lit up with a bright, confident smile. With a cheerful and energetic voice, she greets everyone like it's the most natural thing in the world. The whole class freezes, caught off guard by her bold entrance and the unexpected warmth in her tone. All eyes lock onto her, their curiosity piqued by her vibrant presence. As the teacher prompts the class to settle down, everyone quickly falls silent. Yasuha steps forward and introduces herself with grace. Almost immediately, admiration sweeps through the room. Her beauty, gentle charm, and warm demeanor captivate the students, making it clear to everyone that she won't have any trouble making friends here. Meanwhile, Yuchi sits quietly at his desk, still wrapped in gloom, his eyes distant as he watches the room buzz around him. Then suddenly Yasuha spots him. With zero hesitation, she waves at him enthusiastically from across the room. The class goes still, confused murmurs rising among the students. But before anyone can say a word, she rushes toward him, her excitement impossible to miss, leaving everyone stunned. Without warning, Yasuha throws her arms around Yuchi in a tight, heartfelt hug. The entire classroom gasps. Whispers of disbelief ripple through the air. The bullies freeze, wide-eyed and speechless. But Yasuha, glowing with confidence, proudly introduces Yuchi to everyone as her childhood friend. And not just any friend. She calls him the most precious and important person in her life, the one she admires more than anyone else. As the bullies exchange stunned glances, still trying to process what just happened, Yasuha's eyes fall on Yuchi's desk. His books, torn and water-damaged, lay in ruins. Without missing a beat, she flashes a bright, cheerful grin and leans in. With genuine warmth, she offers to share her book with him, knowing full well he won't be able to read from the shredded pages. While several students excitedly call out, trying to get Yasuha to sit with them, she cheerfully brushes off their invitations without a second thought. With a bright smile, she confidently takes the seat right next to Yuchi, completely unfazed by the surprised murmurs rippling through the classroom. As she settles in, her eyes gently drift to his hands, her cheerful energy softening with quiet concern. After a brief pause, Yasuha gently reaches out and takes Yuchi's hand, leaving him completely stunned. Flustered, he quickly mumbles an apology, saying he needs to focus on the lesson. But instead of pulling away, Yasuha calmly rests her head on his shoulder, a soft smile of contentment spreading across her face. The whole class watches the scene with simmering jealousy and irritation. By lunchtime, the tension only grows stronger. Through the classroom's glass window, classmates glare angrily as Yasuha and Yuchi sit side by side on a bench outside. To them, the sight is downright infuriating. Nearby, a group of bad boys sit together, drinking and muttering among themselves. One of them, clearly annoyed, finally snaps at his friend for tossing Yuchi's books into the washroom earlier. His frustration boils over because, thanks to that prank, Yasuha, a cute girl, ended up sitting next to Yuchi instead. But his friend, completely unfazed by the anger, just shrugs and tells him to deal with Yuchi himself if he's got a problem. Meanwhile, watching from the window, a jealous guy burns with resentment. He doesn't only want to see Yuchi humiliated, he wants Yasuha all to himself. His grip tightens in frustration. Barely holding back his rage, he drags his nails across the glass, the sharp scrape echoing his rising fury.